do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
What the is that, dude?
G'day, folks. How are you? It's been an interesting few hours, few days, if I'm honest. Hope you're doing well. Life, the universe, and everything progressing along happily. It's been an interesting week. There's been all sorts of weird madness floating around from the release of Julian Assange. Some very interesting comments from Ricardo Bosi. And what I will hope you'll bear with me to play through a great example of the stupidity of the Australian media. Get to and have a little bit of a discussion with, I hope, in the not too distant future. I've invited Vince along tonight and the Galacs, but I haven't actually heard back from the Galacs. They may be off busy, I don't know, tearing trees down or painting, or they just might be knackered, because I know they have been renovating, and we'll see how that goes. I've also invited Becio from Truth Seekers to join us. She's may or may not have guests popping by, so we'll see what happens there. She might bring friends. It could be a very interesting little party, and we'll start it off with a man who I know loves to wave.
There's the wave.
There you go, mate. Mate, that's a spectacular jumper you're wearing.
Yeah, an op shop. Beautiful.
An op shop? Really?
Yeah.
I've never believed it. Handy,
and how are you?
I would say.
It feels that way, and it's lovely and warm. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is chilly down your way. I noticed 15 degrees. I think Adelaide was getting today. So I imagine you're either fractionally cooler or just fractionally warmer than that, if you're lucky. But you're beside the water. I'd imagine it'd be pretty cool. Yeah,
14 is what it's telling me on my watch.
Oh, very pleasant. Very pleasant. Yeah, I'm doing all right, mate. It's been an interesting week. Had an email box with 3,000 emails from the server, which was interesting, but they told me I don't need to worry about those. So that little
so if
emails
haven't got out to maybe a couple of our invites because of that, actually, I'm just I was just looking at that then when we came live, so I went, oh crap.
So I've resent both to. Well, did you get the first or the second one when you joined?
I haven't got either. I snuck in the back door and got in that way.
Oh, did you really? You might have to teach Beck how to do that, because I've been sending off invites to her, and I'm not sure that she's getting them either. I might try using the old Gmail account, see if that works any better.
I should be able to grab her email from here and I'll send it off. So if you want to prattle on for a minute, did I say that? Sorry. If you want to bring up a couple of subjects, I'll see if I can forward these on to the Galactic Centre.
Roger that. All right. Well, do you want me to just take you off while I'm prattling on? You just wave when you're ready, and I'll try and put you back up. I guess the first thing that I'm going to talk about tonight is something I would have spoken about a couple of nights ago. But there's been a few things. Oh, Beck's joining us. There's been a few things that have reared their head, so to speak, after Ricardo's chat on whatever night it was when he had the dark room. He addressed to a point the three questions that Guru had asked and answered one of them. And he dismissed the first two questions as irrelevant. And was very dismissive of them and just moved on. It was a very short piece. And I felt a bit disingenuous, given that only a short period of time ago, Dave Graham was the only man that Ricardo could trust in the freedom movement, and yet doesn't have the time or respect to answer a couple of questions. That draws attention to the questions and why would Rick want to avoid answering them. So he seems to think it's just going to go away. And look, it probably will. People just forget and move on. And, he's ploughing on like there is no difference, as you would expect. But I can't understand how he doesn't understand. Well, maybe I've got it wrong. So let me bring Vince and Beck in. Vince has already waved. The lovely Becio from Truth Seekers. How are you, darling? Have I got this wrong a bit? Do I think that because he refuses or dismisses the two questions, one of which was, did you tell everybody or anybody that that you guys were being taken to NCAT or whatever it is in New South Wales, the real estate court, by the real estate agent and the guy that owned the house that they were staying in? That's the first question. And the second question, I've forgotten now what that was. But sort of, there was a relationship to what he'd said publicly versus what had happened, obviously, in the end. And it didn't relate to anything to do with the New South Wales state election or the funding issues or whatever's going on there with Jacob Vogt. So have I got it wrong? Is he missing the fact that it's his credibility that he is dismissing here? In my eyes, anyway. Vince?
Yep, I'm still doing that. Is Beck there? And maybe she'd like to answer.
That'd explain that blank look on your face.
No comment. No comment.
You're not going to talk about it.
Mm-mm.
Jeez, I'm glad that went well. All right.
Sorry, I wasn't even listening, to be quite honest. But I heard someone's name, and I don't really give two shit, to be quite honest.
Love your work. All right. If I say Biden, how does that make you feel?
If you say who?
Biden.
Oh, God. How funny was that today?
Did you watch it?
I watched parts of it. I watched probably the first 15 minutes. And the stumbling that guy was doing, I don't know how Trump doesn't just sit there and piss himself laughing. I really don't.
Well, let me just play you this small piece. This is but one. I listened to the entire a hell of a doorbell. I listened to the whole debate. I was driving, and oh God, it was embarrassing. It was truly embarrassing. But I've got this one little piece for you to just get a bit of an idea of how well it went for Joe Biden.
All those things we need to do, childcare, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
So he beat it to death. It's not quite the Hillary Clinton line of 2016. Thank God we don't have Donald Trump as president. You said you're right, because if I was president, you'd be in jail. Never backed that statement up, by the way. But that was the exit poll results done by CNN after their
Are you there, Carl? He's dropped out again. Carl's got some
Oh, has he? Okay. I missed. I heard that a little bit earlier. What did you think, Becco? What did you think of the? I mean, you have to laugh.
Oh, that's all you can do, isn't it? Are they just putting him up there to be that pawn for people just to really see how pathetic he is? Like, it's crazy.
I've just seen his special guest pop into the room.
Oh, there we go. I've been talking to him today, so I thought he might be able to give us a great insight.
Absolutely. He's just dropped out again, though. I think we might be having a couple of issues with how many people are in the room. Vince, I might drop you at one point in the very near future if I have to.
Yep.
So, the bandwidth, I think, was struggling to put the extra one in by the look of it.
Sorry, I was
And
just
I
having a
will-
laugh at someone.
He just said, "Let me find a stronger signal." So he's just
Oh,
trying to
great.
find.
So maybe, yeah, great. Maybe it's not me. Maybe it is him. I am actually on Starlink at the moment, so I may even just swap that over to. Yep, it's still working. I'll swap that over to that. So great. Looking forward to having that special guest of yours in. Thank you very much for the tag to bring him along. That'll be an interesting chat.
I know how much
The
they wanted
American
to speak to them. The prize.
the American media must have had a very bad day, I would say, or the Democratic Party. I can't begin to think of the conversations that have taken place behind the scenes after that debate. Did you happen to catch much of it, Vince?
No, actually, I've spent a lot. I'm going to watch that a little bit later tonight, but I was just busily watching Tucker Carlson slap our journalists around here earlier on the front page.
Well, actually, I have that too, but I have a piece that's the reason the show is sort of half an hour later tonight, folks. I was still trying to cut this stuff out. I didn't get home from where I've been for the last little while until late this Savo. So I've been trying to edit some stuff together, and it's just time's got away. But I've got one rather long piece, which we'll get to and play, but it's 6 minutes long, and I don't want to hold this guest up if he pops back in. So rather than hitting that button now, the Tucker Carlson, I went to Tucker Carlson last Saturday night in Brisbane and thought it was a brilliant show. He didn't trash Australian politics or politicians for that matter. I don't think I heard the name Albanese or Dutton out of his face the entire night. He, some might have said he was a bit light on, but I don't believe that to be the case. He spoke at great length about sovereignty, sovereign nations, and that was one of the pieces that I will pull out and play up. Probably not tonight because it's part of like an 11-minute long piece, so I'll try and cut this bit out. But he's very proud of American sovereignty. He gives us a significant warning about relying on America and things like the AUKUS treaty, relying on America to come save us if China comes knocking on our door for our resources and our land. Very serious warning. He said, don't rely on it. Do not expect it to happen. And cited Taiwan, Vietnam, Christians in Iran and Iraq, people in Afghanistan. They left their own people behind in Afghanistan, for God's sake. So, he cited, some very good points for the Australian people to think about and move towards, particularly with sovereignty, to open up their minds to what that actually means. And he's also going to be asked, he was asked, well, this is the piece I'm going to play. There is an AAP journalist who, I don't know if she still works for the AAP. Maybe she's just too embarrassed now to go back to work, but I doubt it. These people don't understand embarrassment. They don't, because they think they're perfectly right. And when I play it, you'll hear that she refuses to take Tucker Carlson's word on a fact she raises to use against him. And she refuses to believe it the whole way through until he eventually draws a line in the sand and says, well, how can we be friends if the first thing out of your mouth is lies? And you can't cite it. You can't prove to say, you can't prove that I said what you say I said, and I certainly deny saying it. He had a beautiful example of the Australian media, a couple of them, in fact, even though the ABC guy probably asked reasonable questions and was hoping for different answers. Tucker made the ABC guy look a lot better than I think he actually was. So, that was...
Get into that one a little bit later, Carl. But what do you think from... I raised it last week about the fact that it's so blatantly obvious now. Why? To do with Biden and Trump and whatever. Why is it so blatantly obvious? Why are we all being drawn into that? What is happening that we don't know about is the question I'm now asking.
Well, what was the distraction? What was the distraction for the Assange release out of nowhere?
Well, I think part of that is because they did say in one of the news reports that they now had permission to go to the Supreme Court of America under the First Amendment, fighting under the First Amendment, freedom of the press. So if he had won that battle, he would have been locked up for a long time yet, because they would have just drawn it out. But if he'd won that battle, that would be significant. But now at the moment, they've got him signing an agreement to that espionage, which effectively creates a precedent. And now most news agencies and most reporters now have got a precedent over their head that if they go that little bit too far at keeping the bastards honest, they're going to end up in jail, because that precedent's now been set. So that's a sad day for freedom of the press in America. We don't have it here, so it doesn't matter, because we just don't have freedom of the press.
That's an interesting point you raise. What would happen to that precedent should Julian Assange be pardoned after the next, if there is one, election in the USA? Bearing in mind that Chelsea Manning, the person that supplied the documentation to WikiLeaks that was published, did 7 years and then got pardoned.
Pardon is only against the person, not against the precedent.
That's what
my thought would be.
Mm.
So the precedent still stands. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, I agree. I can't see how, if the precedent was set on a failed decision, like a decision that failed at appeal, how could it remain a precedent?
It doesn't. It has to go through the appeal process first, though. So someone has to take it to the High Court, and then it has to be overturned by the High Court. The overturning creates its own precedent, meaning that the previous precedent is dead. But they're not going to take it to the High Court, because Julian's free now, and so he should have been for the last 12 years, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, can you blame him? Honestly? He's been fighting this for 12 years. We've only been fighting for 4.
Very true. We have the full plea deal, if you like, up on vofhq.com. If you want to read that document, I haven't been through it yet, but it is extremely detailed and outlines exactly what essentially Assange demanded and what the US government demanded in return. That all adds up to, I guess, the kill switch keys and everything that has been left in hidden servers and email addresses around the world. They're happy that they've got all that now. It's not going to be released. Where does that leave Assange's future? Is it writing a book and going on a speaking tour? Or is it, do you see him getting back into actively? At the end of the day, he inspired a lot of people and gave many of what people in what we're doing ammunition, rabbit holes to follow, truths to reveal. And I know, I don't know if all of you, Vince, if you've been down, I know, Becio, you have, I think, have actually been into the full tranche of files. They're very difficult to work your way through. You've really got to be quite dedicated to want to go through and find them. Being able to index them and find the bits that you're particularly interested in seeing, and then thinking of ways that they could be hidden in other kinds of documents. What WikiLeaks didn't provide was all the answers. Well, they did provide all the answers. They didn't provide a clear pathway for everybody to follow in a sequential timeline or anything like that. So you had to be quite dedicated to go in and try and find anything. And I know many people said they did, but truly, the amount that really did the hard yards on that is minuscule compared to those that are claiming they did. And I think the US government is part of that. I don't think they did quite their homework either. Can either of you remember a story of anybody being hurt or killed or disadvantaged out of anything that was released from WikiLeaks.
Only the people that got shot by the helicopter, but other than that, no.
No.
Well, yeah, and unless you follow the rabbit hole, then a lot of what was released in the WikiLeaks documents would have been used in trial evidence at Gitmo for various people. So that may well have resulted in a few deaths, but, you know, Hillary, Obama, those sorts of things. I don't know. But
Probably shouldn't have smiled when you said that, but never mind.
I've been suppressing smiles all night. Just back on to Biden for a minute. We could have played that 6-minute piece from Tucker Carlson. So just on to Biden for a bit. Democrats are in panic mode. They're screaming, how can we let him go to the next debate, let alone the next election? Kamala Harris, that she that's walking along behind him is trusted less by the American people than Joe Biden is. They are bringing up Newsom out of California, and today during the poll they were showing opinion poll ratings in live, like live at the time. Newsom's ratings went up as Biden's plummeted. Do we see Newsom as a viable candidate to walk in and contest this election? Or, and Becio, I'll ask you, do you think we might see Big Mike making an appearance?
I think I'd be more towards Big Mike because they really don't want Trump to win. And it would be the perfect way to get those that aren't awake to vote for the other side, I think. So we still have a lot of people that aren't awake. But then does that give a bit of disclosure for what Big Mike really is?
Well, one might hope that there could be some disclosure. Trump also mentioned while he was addressing one of the CNN hosts about oh God, I've got to get this right. It was to do with the border crossings, I believe, and some actions that he took while he was president versus actions that were taken by Biden took. And I found it very interesting. He singled this particular comment of this woman's out. I wish I could remember it, and I will dig it out and play it next week at some stage. Now I've forgotten what the hell he said. Oh, God. Oh, he said,
it's been a hard week.
He said, in fact, let's have a press conference on it next week. Now, whatever the it was, the topic is rather important.
And there's the drop in the signal for half a second. Do you know which topic he's talking about, Beck? No. Okay.
No, we're back again. It appears. Yep. Yeah, interesting that he said let's have a press conference about this next week, and it was one of those sort of hidden kind of topics that he was talking about, which made me think, well, maybe there's some disclosure coming our way further again next week. I think there's disclosures happening every other day at the moment on small to large scale. I wonder how, because the Big Mike phenomenon, for those of you that aren't aware, we're talking about Michelle Obama. The Big Mike phenomenon is going to be a thing if she comes out to run, don't you think? It has to be.
I reckon it's going to be huge if she runs.
Oh, yeah, I do too.
It sort of holds to part of the plan that, and this is just a theory, that at the moment it's still being run by the Obama administration through proxy. And this just is another way of extending that proxy, and then it moves into Michelle, if she is the one to be elected, continuing that. So, you know, how do you usurp that you can only run twice as president? You proxy it. That's how you do it. So,
So
I don't know.
Well, you've got CNN coming out just destroying Biden as well, which is
yeah. They're calling him out on the lies that he actually told during the debate, which I'm staggered about. There was live fact checking going on that was actually fact checking. You know, they were calling him out on everything that he was saying, and while they were trying to call Trump out, when they couldn't call him out, they were saying what he said is true. Whereas previously they would just not bother mentioning anything about it. But this time they would say, yes, that's factual. Yes, that's factual. I was actually listening to another streamer's stream of it, and they were doing a commentary over the top, and there were 6 of them, and they were all doing different sorts of analysis on polls and all that in live real time. And it was very interesting to hear. Firstly, I think how I was surprised at how surprised they were at how bad Biden was. They were immensely shocked that he fell apart within minutes of walking on the stage. They weren't quite calling for him to be taken out of his misery, but they were fact-checking everything as well, and then backing their fact-checking up against others. But they didn't know very significant things that Trump had said until they went and fact-checked them to find out that hang on a minute, he was the first person to do that, or he was the first person to announce that, or he was the first president to fund this and stop that. And all of a sudden, what I thought was a very partisan Democratic little team on this stream swung the whole other way. Not so much right behind Trump, but just we can't have this bloke. And Trump was very strong. You know, he was very strong. I think, and this is when I first heard that they weren't going to have an audience. And folks, if you missed and don't care about any other part of this election debate, please go and watch the start where Biden is introduced and he walks on stage. Please watch that, because as he walks on stage, he's waving to an empty studio. There's nobody there.
Well, he shakes hands with invisible people, so maybe he sees dead people.
That's a very good point. Maybe he does. It's laughable that they're expecting the American people. I would think it's laughable. I give the American people credit for much higher levels of intelligence than this. Have you seen at all, Beck? I haven't seen any numbers. How many people actually watched it?
No, I haven't. I haven't had a look at that.
CNN, I think they were predicting 70 million.
Let's have a look.
Well, how many people voted in the last election? 180 million? Joe Biden claimed to get most of them.
Yeah.
I don't think it was quite that many, but he got the highest amount of votes in history. It was over 80 million, I want to say.
It's something like about 30 million more than the actual number of registered voters from what someone else posted out at one stage.
Yeah. I suppose that's the question. How many registered voters are there in the States? And if there's only 70 million and CNN got 70 million viewers, well, that's going to make for a pretty resounding result, I would have thought, for Donald Trump in November.
No, it's 130,000 that I saw, at least. So,
yeah. At the moment, they're calling, the leftist media are starting to call out anybody who is pointing out jokes, like maybe the one that I played a little earlier. They're calling disrespectful of the office, disrespectful of the person. They're not quite saying it's probably disrespectful to make jokes about a senile old man who should not be standing in front of a television camera with an audience of hundreds of millions.
And the finger button that presses nuclear weapons. Not saying.
I get the feeling. I really do get the feeling that Obama has that box beside him. There might be some bloke walking around
I think Obama's in his ear somewhere.
Oh, definitely that part. But or the commander-in-chief still has it.
Well, that to me is the most settling for me. I have always believed that the suitcase resides with the commander-in-chief. So because
we're not
it's
gonna say
military.
Didn't he memorize the code as well? That's why they went through the house at Mar-a-Lago. He memorized the code.
He memorized the code, for it, yeah. And some have said
actually
that it's actually been put. So
does that make us safe? Because if Biden has it and the code has to be memorized, we're good.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
Some people will get that.
Mate, he'd write it down on a piece of paper and leave it in the garage behind the Corvette, just like every other piece of classified material he's ever wanted to or needed to keep.
That he was too senile to be charged for. Yeah, that one.
Yeah. I haven't actually jumped into the chat tonight to see who was first or who's in or anything like that. Hello to everybody in the chat. I want to send my love especially to Sunflower and Rick tonight. I hope everything is going well with you guys and life, the universe, and everything is bringing you joy and much abundance. I think there's a few other people in here too. Paul Revere was first in again tonight, and Watler, not too far behind. A bit of a scroll down. Hello, Angela. Donna Lee, how lovely to see you, and I hope you're feeling okay, darling. Donna does have a few ailments and an ex-boss company called Woolworths, bunch of pricks, who I'm not going to get into it. I'll only get myself sued. And that's not going to help either of us, is it, Donna? But love to you and to my Mason mate. That would be absolutely joyous to catch up with you guys soon, and that is the plan. I haven't told you about it, but we'll be up your way soon. Rainey, hello to you. G'day to Springtree. I don't know, Vince, are you seeing any questions in, or I'm just scrolling down? G'day, Macca. G'day, Brett. Dusty, Daniel's in. And, boy, Daniel, I bet you're feeling it in Canberra at the moment, mate. Bet you're feeling it at the moment. Tucker jumped up in your respect. Did you go and see Daniel? I hope you went to Canberra and had a look. That was a much more intimate get-together than what I was part of and the rest of the country had when he was seeing us. At the Brisbane Entertainment Centre, I would say there were probably 10,000 people there, close to 10,000. It was only the very top tier of the entertainment being sold, and there was barely a vacant room in the house, a vacant seat in the house. So I believe that's pretty much as it was all the way around the country. Sellout, for the want of a better term, shows. There have been the media who've been saying, oh, they've had to drop the ticket price. Well, I saw tickets from as low as $50, depending on where and what you're going. And they're not getting small venues. They're getting big entertainment centre venues. So these cost money, lots and lots and lots of money. And it's not important to Clive Palmer exactly how much money that he gets out of it. This isn't a money-making exercise for Clive. He just wants as many people as possible to get access to Tucker Carlson and hear him speak. And one of the things that impressed me was Clive's speech on the night. Now, Clive plays a certain role. Dinesh D'Souza was also there. We watched a bit of 2,000 Mules, and he did a very nice 15-minute little speech. And Dr. Melissa McCann, who's part of the tour as well, also a very important petition that she's a part of now. And we'll get a hold of her as soon as the tour finishes, and she'll come on and have a bit of a chat and bring us up to speed with how she's going to be holding the government accountable for what's gone on over the last 4 years or so. Oh, looks like we've got a new special guest joining us. So I guess without further ado, I'll hit the button and invite him in. For the first time, I would like to thank Becio. I haven't thanked her for the first time. I thank her a lot. But for the first time, I'd like to thank 107 for joining us on the Voice of Freedom. Thank you, Juan.
Hey, folks. Good to get a chance to visit for a minute. I was going to dial in a moment ago, but I just didn't have as strong a connection as I would like to, so I had to change to a different location, get a little bit stronger connection for you.
Well, thank you for taking the time and making the effort to change location and get a bit stronger. I'm not sure what time zone you're in at the moment. Last I heard
You're in London?
Actually, I'm headed up into the North Atlantic right now. So
dropping in and out.
Yeah,
I'm really glad that you're not laughing, but it must have been hard to watch for many Americans today.
I don't think there was any surprise to most Americans. They expected what they got. And, CNN, their numbers were that Trump won by 67% of the viewers that were watching, and 33% said that Biden won. So those are interesting numbers all by themselves if you get right down to it. And the real issue is this. People were wondering if Biden could make it 90 minutes.
Yeah.
The reality is he didn't make it 90 seconds. It was painful to watch, but who in America really didn't kind of know there was going to be a problem for Biden to stay on pace with Trump. He doesn't think or move as fast. There's nothing about him that is as forceful, precise, fast as Trump. And Trump still has that New York businessman presentation or persona. It's the very reason that he got to the presidency in the first place, if you get right down to it. And there's a lot of people that take offense at that personality. But in the world the way it is right now, you have to be a bit direct, forceful, move things along. This is not an era where just being a nice guy and trying to be even keel and everything else really works. We're coming into a very contested moment globally. It's like in the movie The Godfather, and there's a moment when you need a wartime consigliere, and we're coming into a moment globally where it could break in very horrendous ways on a dime. So we need to be, understand the moment that we're in. This is not playtime. We're on the verge of a nuclear exchange in Central Europe. That's not a minor thing. The things that are being articulated out of Russia right now are things that weren't even said in the height of the Cold War. Do you know that at no time from the Russian Revolution all the way up to weeks ago did the Soviet Union, in the height of the Cold War, or even thereafter, as they had to rebuild because we defeated them in that Cold War, had any of the Russian leadership ever called America an enemy? Not once. Even at the height of the Cold War, nobody was as loose with their verbiage, their statements, as is happening right now. Putin has said now, just in the last couple of weeks, that America is now their enemy. Biden said that our proxies, the Ukrainians, could use weapons that come from America, paid for by the American citizens, that are being given to the Ukrainians in this NATO alliance, that they could use them on Russian soil, and supposedly put a limit on how far into Russia that they could go to use them. Well, imagine if an enemy says, look, we're not striking Central Australia, but you're okay to hit Melbourne because it's kind of at the edge. Okay.
Yeah.
How well would that be received? Which part of your yard are you willing to give away to an enemy to allow them to do something just because, well, it's not the main house. It's just a corner of the yard. It's just where I keep the apple tree or the cherry tree or something. It's where the kids' little sandbox is. But the rest of the yard, you can't go there. How long is that going to last? Is there a fence? What does that definition change? When the Black Hats were trying to get America and other countries within the NATO alliance into the war in Syria, a certain incident happened. A rocket-propelled grenade had gone over the border into Turkey, killed a mother and daughter supposedly. And when that happened, then the instant response, the planned response, was that we needed a buffer on the border between Syria and Turkey. And then that border was initially proposed as 10 miles, and it should be enforced by American aircraft and helicopters out of Turkey, that no Syrian forces or aircraft could come within 10 miles of its own border in the air, and no forces could come within 10 miles of the border with Turkey. With that in mind, Turkey said no and hell no, and the Russians backed them up on it. They brought in S-400 missiles to enforce that nobody's coming inside of Syria to enforce that border. In this modern moment in Ukraine, Ukraine was always supposed to be a neutral area after the Cold War. And we promised in our agreements with Russian leadership, that NATO would not move 1 inch further east in bringing countries into NATO against Russia. Well, now you're talking about moving that border all the way back right up to the Russian border. And so this neutral zone has been impinged upon. And that Russia just can't allow that. It was one thing to allow that they could go ahead and do what they're doing with their proxy war into, through Ukraine. It's another thing when you say, okay, now your weapons can go into Russia, 100 miles? And then sometime later when they're still getting hit 200 miles, and sometimes later when they're still being hit Moscow itself. Russia's not going to allow that. But the other thing that's not even in the equation for most people looking at this problem worldwide right now is that the pressure on Putin isn't from the West. It's not from Ukraine. It's from the Russian people. The Russian people have lost 100,000 dead. They've lost several 100,000 injured. They're continuing to take attacks from the Ukraine side with American weapons, American advisors from positions inside the Ukraine. The CIA had 12 bases of operation inside Ukraine that were all revealed, 54 biolabs that they were involved in across Ukraine. That were developing genetic weapons that could be used against the Russian people. Weapons not conventional, horrid, horrible things aimed at attacking Russia, destroying Russia. The Russian people...
And targeting certain types of Russians too, wasn't it? There are certain Slavic groups through Russia.
Yeah,
and they were targeting just specific genes.
A genetic war. That's right. Just like a James Bond movie. Certain families. Okay. But let me just add this one thing. The Russian people have, think within your own families. How many brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers would you stomach losing before you escalate a conflict like this? What's the trigger point where you're no longer going to just have acceptable losses? If you have bigger weapons, when do you say, okay, now we bring out the big guns? In a certain period of my life, with stuff that I had to do, lightweight handguns, 9mm, a 45 in the pocket, whatever, were not at all adequate for things we were doing. And I had a Thompson machine gun. I needed something that had a little more punch and could put more lead down range, or I would not, have had what was needed to survive.
Sure.
You had to have the ability to grab something that had real weight and could put a lot of lead down range if you were going to stand a prayer in a certain situation. How long before Putin gives in to the Russian people and uses a tactical nuke? Medvedev, the former president of Russia, who's really a Putin sycophant, held that position as a holding point between the first era and the second era of Putin in the presidency. Medvedev has said a number of times that if he were president, he would already have turned Kiev to glass. He'd have used a nuke.
Yeah.
And the Russian people are of a similar mentality. How many of our sons and daughters, how many of our citizenry are we supposed to sacrifice before we say that we can't afford to sacrifice one more life? And we pull out the big guns and just put this to an end. Putin's smart enough to know, unfortunately, that would not be the end. It might satisfy a certain crowd around him. But at the end of the day, it just grow up bigger. But if you're facing an existential crisis where you will no longer exist again if you don't take some action, at what point does Putin say, you know what, this isn't going away, they're not getting it, we're going to have to use the big stuff? And then if the West wants to counter, okay, it's on. We're all in. If they create a no man's zone of Ukraine with nuclear fallout, so be it. But they'll make a no man's land there. The West is not stopping. And then I come all the way back to the debate. If Trump were president, we would not be in the middle of a conflict in Ukraine like we have right now. We would not be on the verge of nuclear war. I don't think anybody in America or anybody in the world of any significance can argue with that position. So the whole world is looking for leadership. We do not have it in Washington, D.C. in a way that we need it. The leadership that we're getting is weak. It's of no value. Let me step to a little quieter spot.
President Trump stood up today and said that he will end both the war in Ukraine and the problem with Israel and Palestine at the moment in his presidential elect term before he's presented to the people in January as the next president. I don't doubt those words for one moment. There wasn't a single war America was involved with, and I think he had some significant behind the scenes dealings with other nations to stop any other wars starting up. It seems to be plainly obvious to many people outside of America that he was responsible for that peacetime, if you like, during his first term. Why would anybody accept that he would want anything different this time around?
Well, he was a strong person. Again, that New York personality. And he made his points and he held to them. And when you have someone that is strong like that, they can force other people to come to agreement, make the deal, bring a crisis to some high point, and then some form of resolution. It may sound horrible to have somebody strong like that that's so forceful, but the other side of the coin is when you don't have a strong leader like that, situations escalate, And the damage is 1,000 times worse in this particular situation because you have a bunch of weak people that have allowed something to go to a ridiculous level. That seeming harshness, that brazenness actually prevents things getting out of control like they are right now, and bringing the world to the verge of war. But see, war by another means is also in play here. It's not just that you have soldiers on the field dying. We're on the cusp of a global economic crisis that's going to be epic. As I've mentioned numerous times over the years, for 1,000 reasons, it actually started in Brazil a few months back. It just began, and I said it'll be Brazil, but it'll be hidden. You don't really see it. When the world begins to notice what's going on, it'll start in Japan, and as they have to liquidate some of their bond positions here into the dollar, and it will affect the banks there. But that banking crisis will then move into America, starting predominantly on the West Coast and Hawaii, but it'll move across the country fairly quickly. And it will also affect the economies of the world because so many economies are based on the U.S. dollar. That's what's coming under attack. Ultimately, the dollar will do very well, but not in the short term. So this is in my opinion, just like the ruble, even though we collapsed the ruble in the early 90s and the Soviet Union fell, didn't destroy Russia, and the ruble hasn't gone away. In this moment, we're coming into a banking crisis that will ultimately result in consolidation of much of the banking, the elimination of many of the regional and peripheral banks, and those central banks will become even more powerful and stronger. And that's got a lot to do with what's happening in metals and other things. So,
will we see great changes in the way money is lent or becomes available for private and corporate purposes?
Yeah, because when you have a banking crisis, liquidity is the main key. You're going to have another real estate crisis again. This will be probably more serious than anything that's ever been experienced in anybody's lifetime. And again, it's because of a liquidity crisis in the money. And when these types of things happen, property, wealth doesn't go away. It appears to vaporize for many people, but it actually just concentrates. It aggregates to fewer hands that were, in the precise choke point of the event that's coming. You can't be naive to the magnitude of what's coming this time around. And most of the crisis is going to be north of the equator. You guys actually are out of the way of a significant portion of it. But to the extent that you rely on things that are dollar based, you're going to have a problem. And there's going to be some serious problems tied into the politics in the U.S. and some of the players coming under attack in this. So you don't skate.
Would you expect the dollar to? Would you expect the dollar to remain superior and remain the global currency at the end of all of this, or do you think that BRICS will have a much greater effect and that position will be lost?
Ultimately, because of the way things are going to break, BRICS is the one that's going to get hurt, but not in the early phase. And but that's based on a Trump comeback. What will happen in the short stopping of where these globalists wanted to take the world, starting with America and our closest trading partner, by the way, Japan. So before we get there, lots of drama, but ultimately the dollar will do better. The BRICS countries aren't going away either, but they're built on sand in a lot of ways between the relationships and the glue in those relationships. And a lot of what's been going on and the world is going to be exposed, and the glue that holds all of those relationships together is going to kind of get dissolved. It's water soluble, and it's gonna come unraveled.
And when it falls apart, I'm sure it won't be pretty. I know many people in America are calling to be able to see much more evidence of this publicly. A lot of people in Australia are calling for that too. We all want to get to
let me just stop and say one important thing. I apologize for interrupting, but let me just say this. For anybody that doesn't understand, on the far side of these current close-in crises, Australia and New Zealand and Canada will end up closer to the United States than ever. And there is a bond.
It's funny you say that, because one of the questions coming out of our chat is Australia the 51st state of America already, or do you expect it to become that way?
I don't think that's an accurate way of saying it. In fact, as we go back to what was intended in the original Constitution of the United States, the states were all considered a country to themselves. Internally, they governed themselves, and there was an interstate compact, alliances for trade and taxes and commerce, movement of citizenry and commerce within the country. But they were a nation state in the viewpoint of the way the Constitution of the United States worked. The senators, their role, the U.S. senators, was changed 120, 30 years ago. And prior to that change, they were considered ambassadors to the federal operation in Washington, D.C. And the reason is because the states were content, part of the whole Constitution was these questions of how much power the federal government would have. And if you look at the Constitution, it's a decentralizing document. It doesn't concentrate power in Washington, D.C. The power remained with the states for their own internal operations, taxes, etc. What they did do was this alliance of the states, this union of the states, was for the purposes of facing any external threats, for trade purposes between the countries, for military purposes against any threat. And so this union of states, internally from a legal standpoint, they governed themselves with very little federal operation control or budget. Externally, we were one against any other enemy, and we would come at them as a group to overcome tyranny. Now, what's coming again is a collapse of the federal system here in the country and a reorganization of the federal system, including the military operations, to get rid of a lot of problematic deadweight hubris. When we're done with that, which will take about 4 years, we will be much leaner and meaner. And there will be a desire and a need for some of the other nations that are really our closest partners in many ways to close ranks. And I believe that's exactly what we're going to do. We have a lot of basing there in Australia. There's a lot of interest. Australia and the U.S. Have a lot of very serious co-joined interests, including, and I don't want to go there too much right now, but against this breakaway group that wants to dominate the planet. And you're on the front lines in many ways, as is New Zealand and also Canada, in coming against some of that mischief that's intended for the world. It will be a natural alliance. It won't be something that's forced or coerced as we, through mutual interest, decide to work more closely together. But we're not going to, I don't think that there's a value to Australia losing its individuality, its sovereignty into an American system. It's about brothers closing ranks shoulder to shoulder for mutual interests against common enemies. And
Tucker Carlson.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Tucker Carlson has been in Australia the last couple of weeks. In fact, it's his second last show tonight in Sydney, Melbourne on Monday night. He speaks about this in a very similar fashion. The alliance between Australia and America, although he says we should never rely on America to turn up and save us like Taiwan did or Vietnam did. I don't feel that strongly. I'm very interested, though, in the positioning of our militaries, you mentioned Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, the UK. In Tucker Carlson's speech, he was talking about how we are being de-Anglicized. The Anglo-Western civilizations are being weakened. And he pointed out, using history as its example, that it has been the Anglo-American or the Anglo civilizations, the Anglo-Western civilizations, that have led the world in many, many, many ways, certainly in, if you want to call it, civilization. Do you feel that he's on the mark there, that with what's happening in your country at the moment, in and around the southern borders, and what's happening in different parts of the world with refugees, we're being flooded through our borders at the moment as well. Is this all part of the plan?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm comfortable putting it precisely that way. And let me just say it this way. My wife comes from a family that the mother was Japanese American. The family came to the United States in the 1800s. The father came here from parents, one Irish, one Scottish, came to the United States from there. So can you say Anglo in that situation, even though, you have the Anglo side and you've got the Japanese side and the other side?
Yes,
it's a cultural thing.
Well, I think he's probably more referring, although he said Anglo-Western, I think he's more referencing the Western.
And that's where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
See, America, if you get right down to it, is about a mindset, an ideal, much more so than it is even the genetics. We are such a blended country, as is Canada. Look at how many people out of India are throughout Canada, Australia, other places within this Western mentality. You look at what's there with India. Well, that wouldn't fall into an Anglo interpretation. Yet they're a huge component of Western society. And you could say the same thing from other locations. I think using that particular term actually damages the conversation. It takes us to a racist genetics type of conversation that isn't right. An American ideal. See, this is part of the problem with the refugees from all these different places. When Australian society is working correctly, when American society is working correctly, we are able to have time with people coming to America to allow them to culturally change, adapt, bring the best things about where they're from and drop away the worst, and uh, uh, become Americanized, become American in their thinking. America is not a place as much as it is an ideal.
Yes.
And so when you look at Japan, after the Second World War and when MacArthur came to Japan, what he brought to the Japanese people was self-respect. And there was already Western contact and influence within their society prior to the war. You know, a lot of their general staff went to America to be educated. They were there, but the respect that was given to them to rebuild and get back on their feet, that was a very American mentality. At the end of the Civil War in America, it's hard to imagine, but after the war ended and the North and the South um, ended the conflict, all of the um, Confederate soldiers came to central locations, laid their arms into huge stacks and heaps. The men shook hands. They agreed that the war was over at the local level as well as at the national level. And then the defeated men went back to the piles of arms and weapons and pulled their weapons back out and went home armed. But they had resolved that the Union was going to continue on. There was problems. There was guys that couldn't stomach it and continued to want to fight a covert war. But the reality is we are still a single country. And I think we're going to see that with much of what's coming right now. There's going to have to be some kind of resolution that understands that with what's coming, we were brought to the brink of nuclear war, that the world was nearly taken off the rails by these globalista, and that the enemy actually isn't, let's say, Russia in this current situation. The true enemy is the globalista that tried to get us fighting brother against brother.
Yes.
And to destroy each other. And then we will resolve, there's certain principles that actually the Australian people have done the mental gymnastics in mass. This intervening tyrannous moment revolving around the vaccines and some vote manipulation, the economic stuff that's going on and is about to come, the wielding of insane taxes at every level, that is going to be overcome. And then if you get right down to it, America is going to have to go through this house cleaning. In the scriptures, it says that judgment begins in the house of the Lord. And so before the whole community gets taken care of, even before all the families get taken care of, there is house cleaning that takes place within the church, the temple, the governance of God's house and the way it works, and the corruption, the malfeasance, the captured aspects of the way that operates need to, the tyrants need to be removed. Those that were there in name only and not, the true church, if you will. Australia and America both have the same problem. A cult of tyrants, mobsters, bloodline families, hidden relationships has captured control of the mechanisms of power and governance. And they have been wielding that like an Al Capone type of a thing in the city of Chicago. Who's running the government? The ones that are there through electoral process, or the ones pulling their strings, making sure that the police enforce according to their viewpoints, with hidden connections that the judges won't bring justice where it affects the crime syndicate behind the scenes. And in America, we've had a number of mob operations around the country that have gotten into such tight control of the politics that you're not really seeing justice. You're seeing a form of the appearance of justice that's actually injustices, because it's being controlled behind the scenes by these various strings. And I go to Australia. How's Australia in that? Remember, the Clinton Foundation was able to hijack operations inside of Australia sufficiently that they got the Australian government to give $80 million to the Clinton Foundation for their beneficent operations in other parts of the
and
world.
Julia Gillard's post-prime ministership job with the UN, which was also part of a global rollout of another operation, I believe, to do with women or transgenderism, or all the mess that's gone on from the brainwashing of our children and telling them they can be whatever they want to be. You can be a cat at 5, and we'll put kitty litter in the classroom so you can have a wee in that if it makes you happy. It's just staggering.
Well, and of course, some people don't know what we're talking about. Literally, they have reached the point. When I first raised this a year ago, people thought I was trying to tell a joke or something. They've got it now where you've got certain kids, and it's becoming more and more of a crisis. They are having some kind of a mental meltdown that's being encouraged, where they are becoming of a belief that they're an animal, that they then, instead of having to go to a bathroom, can go to a litter box and crap right at the back of the classroom. And that that kind of insanity should be tolerated. In other words, we become non-civilized in our conduct. And that's very Luciferian. That's a form of madness. That's insaniacs running the insane asylum. Literally, our societies, our governance, in a governance of God from above, can you imagine that it would be His will that within His kingdom, right there in the throne room, that kids be crapping all over the floor, that we put a litter box in there? Okay, does that somehow match? There's an old saying, cleanliness is next to godliness. So we literally have sanitation systems. I remember years ago, because of some work that I was doing, and I was dealing with a guy that was a plumber, and a beautiful guy, a very smart guy. Plumbers work the hardest on a construction site. And I'm not kidding. Okay, now I'm going to get a bunch of people's ire up. But I'll tell you what, I know the plumbers do some of the hardest, nastiest work of all. But why is that? Because the mark of an advanced society is to be able to efficiently maintain a level of cleanliness and decorum that sets you apart from the beasts of the field. And is pristine, clean, wholesome. And as you break that down, whether it's just going to a unisex bathroom or not even knowing what sex you are, that's a sign of demonism. It the de-civilization of society, that breakdown that then becomes chaos and disorder. Hell is a place where reason doesn't exist. Does it seem reasonable that everybody just goes out in the yard and craps peas right out there in public?
You're coming in and
of society. And now, do you have the basis for people to come together coherently? And when you help people that are damaged, help them within their own living conditions, you don't just push it out of the way, but you try to add some cleanliness, some order to the way they can function, dignity.
You're coming in and out a little bit, Juan.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's
much
okay.
more wholesome interaction or society. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. After today's presidential election, there's now calls, I think, nightmares in the Democratic area about who they're going to put up. Can they take Biden to what may be an election or not? What are your thoughts? Do you think that it'll be Gavin Newsom out of California if there is to be a change, or will it be Michelle Obama?
Well, it definitely won't be Michelle. That's almost a red herring, in my opinion. There's a bunch of reasons why. One of which is that he, she, it had their law license, had to give it up at a certain point in time, and their ability to practice law for cause. If they were to come back and try to practice law again, or to move into any political position, then we have free opportunity to raise the circumstances in which that happened. I don't believe that legally he, she, it can hold office based on that. That certainly is a point of contention, but we'll have that fight. It's a losing battle for the powers that be. I had a property years ago, a farm, and at the back of a road that was near my farm, a company wanted to put in a gravel pit. But when they went to apply for it, and I knew the strategy because I knew the attorneys involved and I knew what they'd planned, and it annoyed me, but we raised it after they actually began to execute it. They came in, and before, what got my attention initially, there was a bridge, and the bridge was getting a little long in the tooth. It needed some maintenance, and we'd ask for that maintenance to be done. But it was a good bridge, and it could easily support many times the traffic that was on it. It was a little 2-lane bridge, and there was properties out there that were beginning to be developed in this farm area. And so you could easily have run the vehicle traffic up by 50 times instead of having 5 or 10 cars an hour that go over it. You could easily have run hundreds of cars over an hour, and you wouldn't hardly notice it. But somebody got to somebody within that county, and the next thing you know, they're putting in a very expensive bridge that had the ability to, with huge walkways and everything on the side of it and everything. And I was like, my gosh, they're building this bridge that's way out of proportion for anything else in this area. What's going on? What's the plan here? And even for the weight and everything else. And well, they wanted to build a bridge that would survive the next 100 years and any traffic to come. And I'm like, well, all you got to do is go down there.
Nope.
And it's a mile down the way. Didn't make sense. Literally, about the same week as the bridge was completed, everything was done, the folks that wanted to put in a gravel pit came out of nowhere, and they had a proposal that was put up, and they wanted to put in a gravel pit, a cement plant, and an asphalt plant, all on the same property. And
Wow.
they were going to run 600 heavy trucks a day down that road, the 3/4 of a mile to the main highway, and then they were going to put in a different turn and lights and everything at that location. And well, the most important blockage was that bridge, and that was it. And it's a done deal now. It's all over with. The people had a longer term strategy. In the end, when the proposals were made, being very reasonable businessmen, they dialed back and compromised that they were only going to build the cement plant and the gravel pit. And then to support things that need to be done in the area and a highway building and all that. At the end, they compromised with building only the gravel extraction facility and only running 250 trucks a day because they were so reasonable. And they shelved for 10 years proceeding forward with the concrete plant and eliminated forever the asphalt plant because of odor and like that. I sold that farm, and somebody informed me here just recently that they in fact did start the concrete plant up just a couple of years ago and got that part, but the guys never even intended to get that. That was an extra gift. They only did the rest of that so they had a place to compromise. If they'd only started at the gravel plant, they might not have got it. They came in huge with the 600 trucks, and then they seemed to compromise at 250. And now they're upping the number to like 400 trucks a day. With that in mind, proposing,
that's a lot of movement.
It is, by the way. Proposing that a Michael Obama would become somewhere in there on the way to the presidency or a VP is part of the distraction, the ruse. And then being so extreme, knowing that you have a tranny, that there's been so many lies and drama taking place around that, to then compromise. It makes a person like Gavin Newsom or a couple of the other players that could be in this mix look reasonable. Okay? And that's exactly what they want. They needed something extreme that they could then roll back to a level of compromise. And all of a sudden, everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. Oh my gosh, at least we're not getting that. I hate this, but at least we're not getting that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And a difficult game to, well, a difficult thing to handle, I guess, because some of it's got to be seen and some of it's got to be unseen, so to speak. Speaking of that, Pascal Nadali has been coming out.
Yes. Let me just say this. I don't consider myself, I'm not trying to be the internet police.
Dropped out at my end a bit. Pascal's got very excited about Space Force and has volunteered for it by the sound of it. There are a lot of people now. We've been speaking 4 years or more about an end game for all of this. For those with the eyes to see, there are things happening, I reckon, every other day, if not every day. But it's still difficult to see an end in sight. Will there be an election this year, do you think, Juan?
You want to sing your song? Can you just sing your song, Juan?
2020, it's not over yet.
Bravo.
Oh, don't know what's happened.
Yeah, let me just say this. I don't believe that we do get.
Oh, I think we've frozen.
Everyone's great.
No, come back. There you go.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about Most likely, there's not going to be an election on time this year. That's sacrilege within the American political establishment. There's always an election on time having to do with the national politics. But I believe that there's things in play to make it so that certain regions of the country or major cities cannot safely participate in the electoral process. They'll blame a lot of that on the Republicans, including challenges in the way the votes handled, some civil unrest, etc. It's probably multiple things all at the same time that force a pause in the election timing, and that'll be blamed initially on the
chicken flu or whatever.
Yeah, but with that in mind, and I'm not the internet police or like that. I don't want anything like that. I think there's a number of players out there that they will say and propose things that are tickle the ear and they're fun, but really don't have a connection to reality, and it's diversionary, and it's actually it's not helping the situation. Now I sound like that when I say I don't think there's going to be an election on time. So live and let live. I'm willing to let time. Everybody has to kind of pick a lane. They hear stuff, they weigh between it, and we'll see who's still around in a year or two, and how correctly they helped everyone to get through this moment. It doesn't bother me to hear ideas. Could it be Michelle? Could it be Newsom? And what are the legal, logistical checkpoints that would allow that to happen or not happen? But some of what's out there is not helping because it's putting something out as an absolute guaranteed fact, and it's not a fact. And the allegiances, alliances are not as presented. And so I would just ask that everybody take a deep breath and, listen to what's being said, but not
How about read a book
allow.
as well? I think everyone needs to read a certain book, one that you told me to read.
Yeah. Well, and there's, for example, with what Patrick has done within his work, Danger Close. That's a real person with real experiences documented. He has testified before the House and Senate in the U.S. He's got a long history. He's made that public as a asset, providing information in the intelligence community, who has never been refuted as an asset to U.S. intelligence agencies, FBI and CIA. And that's a knowable thing. There's no hidden mystery. You got to pull the pieces together, whatever. And the rest of the story that will be coming out over time. There's another interview, part 2, with Roseanne, that's in the box, in the can. It'll probably be released the next day or two. And that's Patrick Byrne, Bryne. And then
I just shared the
there's a
screen.
third
Can
one.
everyone see that?
Yeah. And then
I'm posting the link up in the chat, so there is a link in the chat for Patrick's book, folks.
And there's a part 3 that's going to be done shortly with some disclosures that are much newer. I think to understand who Patrick is, you need to read the book. You need to hear those first and the second interviews that were done with Roseanne, and then the new stuff that he'll then. You have to have that context for the new stuff that he's going to release here over the next several weeks and a couple of months. Because there's a 4, 5, 6, 7 in some of that stuff that's got to come out. But
Yeah,
that's not.
And will that play a large role in the disclosure that we're expecting toward the end of the year?
A crucial role. There's lots of wannabes out there. He's relevant, vetted, and has substance that will come out that's in a completely different level than a lot of the other people that are just doing like some magical playtime thing with a lot of innuendo. But as soon as you look, it's speculative. It's not with real substance, and you got to trust them and all that. And it's just not the game that we're playing. So over time, cream rises to the top. The true players with real access and stuff, they're the ones that are going to have to be where we put our actual reliance, etc., on what they have, and the other ones that are more speculative in nature will become less important in what's coming. This is about to get very tangible and real with what comes out about the election interference from 2020. And at the end of the day, as I said in my books and all the interviews, everything that's about to happen is about 2020. If you can't win 2020 and prove the election interference, plus the fact that it's coming from outside the U.S., not inside, primarily, that this was an act of war against America by multiple groups aligning together. If you can't overthrow, based on what occurred in 2020, the globalista and their machinations, then 2022, 2024 won't matter. Because remember, nothing of substance has been done to change the way the elections are held in America. And so they just fixed the next one. The difference is that we won't have the ability to get the documentation or the time before all the horrors become real. You know, we are in nuclear war. We have the next pandemic. The economic collapse is complete. You really have to, the situation legally is now ripe. We have the events that occurred. It took several years to expose who's who and their mechanisms and everything else on a legal basis in order to go back in a legal arena to go after the damage to the world that has been done by these players. And so will that legal challenge be done in U.S. courts? Will those be courts administering like police inside of America concerning the election? Would you send the police to engage another country involved in an act of war? Do the police have nuclear weapons, if you will?
Yeah.
The reality is it won't be a policing act internal into America. The act of war wasn't just against America. Numerous countries, including Australia, 71 countries total, were attacked by this same globalista crowd to control who got into power. It's just that the most pivotal, the most important, is the presidency of the United States because of the power that we wield globally and because of the dollar being essentially the world's reserve currency and because of our military depth and technology. So the crown jewel in all of this is, in fact, the presidency of the United States. In order to win for Australia, in order to win for other countries in the world, we have to win that high point, that mountain peak. And then we can go out and begin to pull back in and to restrain, to go after legally all of their other positions of power once we've won the top of the hill, which is the presidency, and exposed the crime families and their involvement in stealing not just the presidency, but the down ballot stuff too, the senators, the legislators, and then by extension, the judges and lots of other things. It won't be done overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. Yeah, we have to go after all of that. So,
is that where Assange?
Yeah,
is that when Assange comes into the show? What?
Well, and I've only got a minute or two longer because I have a appointment in just a moment. Let me just say this. The work that had been done in the background to set the stage to get a legal agreement that wouldn't include Assange going into a prison in the United States or other legal attacks on him, even if they got control of him for a period of time, had been going on for years. Why all of a sudden did this agreement come about? And in fact, the Australian ambassador personally flying, escorting, and bringing Assange back to Australia. In the world of politics, there's no accidents of timing. And in fact, it's a frequent common thing that you'll have a death of somebody and they'll keep them the blood warm on life support, even though they're never coming back. They've had a brain aneurysm, some horrendous event that person is gone forever. And all you're doing is keeping the blood cells warm until you can pick the date for the funeral. I would propose to you that, for example, that was what happened with George Bush Sr. That was what happened with on numerous occasions with other world leaders, so they can orchestrate the conclave to suit their timing, to bring various people together with precise timing. And that's an excuse for everybody to show up and compare notes and have their little secret handshakes and note passing and things like that. In the case of this situation with Assange, all of a sudden, a short while ago, a number of players got the call, and there was an understanding. And then the process began seemingly very quickly, with only a handful of people knowing what was afoot. Assange is then brought to Saipan. They had a previous understanding on the agreement. He was very careful with every word he used, very practiced in what he was going to respond. The agreement in place, time served, and he goes to Melbourne, and certain agreements concerning the material were come to. I would propose to this audience specifically that was part of a magic act, that series of events wasn't about being kind and beneficent to Julian Assange, which, I just, to have sacrificed so much of one's life on a principle, and he didn't, even if agreements were in place, he said what was necessary. He's fought the good fight. He hasn't betrayed his principles. Sometimes you step aside and let others come in and take the fight forward. And it's not, I've heard some people like he betrayed the cause because of certain things that are in the agreement. He is a heroic figure in so many ways. History will be kind to Julian. And on the health
Have you ever
stuff,
seen Oh, sorry, keep going on. Sorry.
On the health stuff, on at this particular age, I'm very thankful that we were able to make that happen, so that he can focus on his health and rebuild it, and then be available to the world on the far side of some of these events that are coming on very quickly now. The timing was good, but it was actually very important. The machine, the crowd that's been manipulating world consciousness in many ways, the politics, the legalities. They did what they did to distract us at this exact moment. It's convenient for them. What are they trying to distract us from? They allowed this to happen with this precise moment in mind. They could have done it a month ago. They could have done it 5 months ago, a year ago. But they've held this in reserve to play this card right now. And even the date of release, you know, when I was aware of this, I'm going, well, if they're going to do that, they're going to release them on 666.
Yeah.
I sent that through to you today.
It's
That's crazy.
the sixth month, 24th day of the 24th year.
Yeah.
Why do you gotta imprint it on with that? Because they love to put their numbers on things they do, so that within their circle, everybody sees it from their circle with the language of numbers and goes, "Oh, that's us." Okay, well, we'll let it happen because that's who we are. So there's more to this plan than other people realize. And trying to flip and portray him as, you know, an antichrist, anti-humanity figure for what he did, and emblazon that date onto his history out into the future. No, that was them exercising the last pull on the choke chain of who they are as they let him, you know, go to draw the world's attention in a magic act while they're doing something else. I would ask what else is going on in the world at the same time they did this, including what's going on in the economy of Japan, the collapse of the yen to the dollar. It's not that the dollar isn't in trouble. It's that compared to the yen's in worse trouble. But because America and Japan are the closest, Japan is America's closest trading partner. As it gets into trouble, it has problems like a hiker on a hill. You know, you rope a bunch of people together going up a hill, so if any one man starts to fall, the others can catch him. The problem when you do that is you put your most experienced, most physically fit climbers at the front and the back of that roped up group. And the reason is because if somebody in between falls or slides, loses their place, you have two people on either side to capture that, stop the fall, and pull that hiker back into position. If one at the end, front or back, loses their grip, they've only got one guy ahead or behind them to stop that fall. And so it could take that guy out. Now you have two guys to pull the next guy out, three guys to pull the next guy out. And it's very dangerous. Japan is in that pin man position. And the leverage of Japan losing its grip in the monetary system to take down other economies, including the United States, is tremendous. And in reality, it started in Brazil and is moving around the world. Remember, you just had a attempted coup in Brazil 2 days ago, and that was in the context of all that's going on here. We're in a very precarious position. The Assange release and then the publicity around it is by intent to distract the world's attention to the other side of the globe while the Magic Act is happening in Europe and the United States on the other side of the globe in these things. Hey, I've got folks that are waiting for me that I have to get to, and I would love to do this again. I hope we gave some useful thoughts to the audience. Look, of all the places in the world that I just gravitate towards the people on a very individual personal basis. Australia is right there at the top, and I get to be lots of places. I have so many wonderful friends around the world. But again,
We've got the
I would,
horses ready for you
well, I'll tell you,
and the motorbikes.
it's Japan, Australia, Brazil. These are places that I'm especially, my friends in those locations, our interactions are especially valuable to me because we are going to be working together very closely in order to be able to assist a whole planet in chaos. And the devil and his minions, I've said it many times, many of your listeners have probably heard me say it. Hell is a place where reason doesn't exist. There's no reason for a hell. There's no reason behind it. It's illogical. And in fact, those that have decided to make their permanent abode in hell itself, make their bed there, one of the hardest things that they will hear in hell is the cries, the begging, God have mercy, God help us, come help me, God, whatever. But in Milton's amazing work, he describes the 9 levels of hell, and as the victim is entering at the gates of hell, there's a great sign: abandon all hope here.
Ye who enter. Yeah.
And there's an insanity and also a crying, because once you've crossed that threshold, God isn't listening anymore. The portal is closed. Those cries for divine mercy, assistance, fall on deaf ears because you're in the devil's abode. And there was no reason. And you'll hear the insanity of the demons, the devil himself. You can't logically work your way through to a logical conclusion. The illogic is the nature of that location. Every action, every movement, every interaction with the demons, the devil, the other victims around you has no coherency, logic, purpose. It's insane. What they do as a natural expression of where they come from is they try to bring their insanity, their lack of logic, coherency, intelligence into our world today. And that's their brand. And I would just ask people that in thinking about where we're going, we're trying to bring back cleanliness, health, coherency, a love of logic and intelligence, which is an imprint of the divine, and into our relationships, our practices, at every level of our society. And that's this common ground of godliness, justice, that holding the line for justice is so critical. That's why in the 2024 Megador coin, which we just released the other day and is now out there, justice is coming, and that is the nature of the year ahead. And I would hope
Where can they
for
find that coin? The
yes,
JenniferMack.com. Is that correct? On
yeah,
Jen's
the
site?
JenniferMack.com. We can't send coins out of the country easily, and so it's hard to get them down there. You get relative or friend up here, they can send them individually, but from a commerce standpoint, it's not really possible for us to. And so if you have friends on the U.S. side, they can do it, and they can send something that's relatively easy. We just can't do it from here ourselves for various reasons. So I'll have to let you guys work that out. But let me just do this in closing, because I have people that are waiting for me right now. Let me just say a prayer with your audience.
Sure.
Father God, Father God in heaven, your governance, your ways, they aren't our ways. It doesn't come naturally to us, except that you put it on our hearts. I pray for every person in this audience, all of our friends across the world who may be listening right now, that you personally would reveal your way for them in their life, that it's a very individual thing, that it's not the way of men. It's not from gurus, it's not from other places, but that they would find your will in your word, your will in a thing written on their heart personally by your own finger, that you write on their hearts what you would have them to do in a way that can't be misinterpreted, that no man can hijack or control, that you would reveal yourself to each person in this audience in a very precise, individual way, and that they would know it's from you and not from some uh, mischievous demon, some doppelganger of your divinity, but that they would recognize your ability to communicate with us directly, individually, that you would hear their prayers when they ask you to show them your will for their lives, their direction, and that cumulatively in the aggregate, that across Australia and across these other countries around the world, we would find common purpose in your governance, Father God, that we would be able to align our purposes with yours and with each other as a result, so that we may stop the world from going into the destruction that the devil and all his minions plan for us, that you would help us to be the pin men that we're supposed to be, to stop the fall of others and the dominance of evil in the world, that we would together, according to your will, be able to bring about a good governance for the planet that is fair and honest, it's based on justice and truth. And it would begin within each one of us individually. Your law, your ways written on our heart, and in forgiveness by the blood of Christ, that we be forgiven where we have strayed or didn't understand and gone astray, that you would help us and you would exercise your grace in each life here to be able to get back on track and then to make a difference within our own household, our own community, and that everybody here would be the head and not the tail in what's to come, that they would be leaders in their household, leaders in their community, leaders in the politics, to bring sanity, cleanliness, beauty back into the lives around them, as well as their own life as an example, that we would be part of the rebuilding of the world in a beautiful way. And wherever we find evil, wherever we find injustice, wherever we find the insanity and the corruption and the filth that is the result of the presence of Satan and all his monsters, his dominion, those that work under his command who are captured, that we would be useful tools in your hands, Father God, to bring about righteousness, justice, clarity of mind, and returning beauty to the communities around us, so that we can enjoy the life that you gave us here on this planet. And more importantly than even ourselves, that we would leave our campsite in this world better than where we found it, that our children, our children's children, generations innumerable beyond this point would benefit because we were here, we heard your call, and we did that which is your will to change the course of history and the course of the people in generations to come, for a better world for them also. We thank you for your patience with us. We thank you for your provision to get through these next steps, that you would give each person here clarity of mind, clarity of purpose, with your clarion call for each of them to do things that you direct, Father God, and to enjoy getting to be useful in your hands, to do your purposes, Father God, in the world. Thank you for all these folks here In Jesus' name, I pray a blessing on each one of them. Amen.
Thanks, Juan. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. And thank you for taking time to spend with us. It's wonderful of you to join us tonight. And safe travels. I look forward to having you back on the show at another date.
I will look forward to it also. We've tried to get this done a couple times and haven't been able to. And I, for all that it may be that I look like I'm just luxuriating, I can tell you that even during the debate last night, a number of the people I was conked out because I knew what was actually probably going to happen for the most part. But I hadn't actually had sleep for several days, getting things done in the background. Travel that was unexpected just hours before, and here I find myself here of all places. But mission accomplished in many levels. I really do. I'm not saying it just because I'm on the show with you. The people of Australia, we have an important future together, and I look forward to crossing all of you folks' paths at some point in the not too distant future, and getting to work together with all of you.
If you get down here, we'll take you barramundi fishing, and we may even let you ride a kangaroo.
Do I get to use a saddle? Should I bring my own?
No, there's no saddle. You tuck your feet into their little pouch at the front and hang on.
I won't bring my white hat because I know that thing's going to hit the dust somewhere in there. I'll bring one of the gray hats. It won't be a black one. I'll bring a gray one though.
Bring a red one, mate. There's a lot of red dirt with those rideable kangaroos. Trust me.
I'll get my Arizona hat out. All right.
That's the way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.
See you, Juan.
All right. Thank you, folks.
Bye.
107. Thank you, Beck. I didn't realize that you were chatting with you on the offline. So I've been trying to get Juan to come on now for, it's months. And we've come close a couple of times, and time zones have messed up and whatever.
He's very hard to get a hold of.
Away. He's very hard to get a hold of. And obviously you were having a bit of a chat and just happened to say, oh, look, Carl's getting me in. So thank you, Beck.
You're welcome. That's what you do.
Appreciate it. I better bring up the balding man who's been waving to himself for the last 2 hours.
That was awesome, Beck. Thank you very much. I decided I'd jump. I said, Cal, kick me off so that there's more bandwidth. So it was well worth it. Very, very, very well worth it. Thanks, Beck.
You're welcome.
A very interesting chat, and I've got to say probably the longest prayer I've ever heard.
I know. He gets carried away.
That's all right. The world needs a lot of praying at the moment, I think.
And
it's good that the Lord is not forgotten, particularly in the people that may or may not be in the throes of changing the powers of the world at this point in time. At least I'm glad he's being mentioned.
So did I see that you said you're having him on your show next week, Beck? Is that right?
Yeah, I had him on just a few weeks ago, so it's up on Truth Seekers TV, and I'm also on another chat with him. He's Sunday, so my Monday morning, there's a few things going on, and I was honoured for him to bring me in. It's got a lot to do with AI, so it's going to be quite interesting. Big project. Yeah, a big project.
Guess whose show you're coming on Monday night to tell us all about it?
Oh God, maybe I might have to get a recording and you can just show it. But yeah, there's a lot of real serious stuff happening with AI, with a few of the Patriots. Scott McKay is getting targeted and so on. And you wouldn't even know that it's AI. It's quite.
Is that right?
What was sent to me. So
it's quite interesting because I've been having a chat about that very thing myself recently, but I've had somebody approach me on behalf of a company that wants to pay me $21,000, and that picked up my attention. I was a bit interested. Who wants to pay me $21,000 for a voiceover? Turns out a company that wants me to go in for 7 days and read whatever I put in front of them so they can record it and have it in perpetuity so they can train their AI. So I don't think
you never get paid again after that point.
Yeah, you'll never get paid again. But interestingly, after the chat that we had with the Galactic Larrikins last week, or maybe the week before, they were telling me about AI and how these programs you can use and go and test. I've been very careful not to ever put anything into an AI machine for whatever reason. But I thought, well, I'll give this particular one a go. I can't remember which one I picked. It cannot do an Australian accent. It cannot do my voice. So good luck. I'm happy to take the $21,000 and let them see what the AI does to it.
Yeah, there was one going around my sister sent me just yesterday, and it's Pauline Hanson on the news talking about money. People are entitled to money, and trying to do the Pauline Hanson accent, but then would come in a bit Yankee here and there. And I was just like, what? My sister's like, have you seen this? Oh my God, how amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, don't you dare. So, yeah.
And if you were to do a real fair dinkum ochre Australian voice, it has no idea. It came out with something which was a mix of mid-Atlantic Swedish and tried to tell me that it was Australian. It was just, So, I mean, it's early days.
The word kanga, right? Jumping around on the kanga. Yeah.
Kanga.
So,
I did say kangaroo, I hope.
You were nice, yes. You did give him the proper. Yeah.
The only question I think it was left unanswered was, where does he buy his boots and can I get a pair?
Yeah, he's actually spoken about the boots on Truth Seekers because we're like, Sherry, you know how Sherry's into
Loves
all the
her
horse
horses.
racing and stuff like that. She had some boots and we're like, we all should, when he comes on, put our feet and show him our boots. So, yeah, when you start a conversation with him before you go and record, you're sitting there for half an hour talking about boots, where he gets his boots. Australia's got the best boots, and summer nats. He wants us to take him. Dale was talking about summer nats, and then they got talking about cars, and then we got, and I'm like, I need to start recording because he only said to me, I've only got another half hour, and I'm like, oh God, here we go. God bless him.
So what we've seen tonight, though, I'm going to do a little promo here. What we've seen tonight, though, is the power of various channels getting together. Truth Seekers, Voice of Freedom, and that's what FBN is all about. And there's the promo. And so basically, that's why we need to build FBN, isn't it? So that we can all combine and we can all share this information. So.
Well, that's what it should be. Everyone should be coming together. It shouldn't be about ego, and hence why I don't deal with other people that I see that are like that don't want to work together. So we can't change the world if we don't work together. So
that's exactly
100%
right.
true.
I was just about to say the same thing, only just not nearly as well. All right, guys, we've been going a bit over 2 hours. So
when you said I was going to be on for half an hour, so
yeah, and you've probably got guests in the lounge room, don't you?
No.
They've
She
given
didn't
up
arrive.
on her?
The kids.
Oh,
the
she
kids,
didn't arrive.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Beck, for coming on tonight. And next time, maybe Julia will join us. Julia from Insight Media does some great stuff too, and is she's part of the great team of girls that you have, the Five Sisters podcast that comes together. Yeah. And if you haven't caught up with that
absent of late, Judas.
Been a bit absent. Well, everybody's a little bit busy. But Truth Seeker TV and the Telegram channels, Beck, is the place to go and catch you.
Yep. So just at Truth Seekers channel on Telegram. So you'll see the little, my little logo, Truth Seekers. You'll see that popping up.
Beautiful stuff. Have a great weekend.
And while he's faded out there, don't forget that's also, you can go looking for Truth Seekers on the Rumble channel. So we'll just promote you along there, Beck.
Thank you. That's all right. That's fine. Yeah. So, but anyway, I'll see you all. Oh, are we going or we're going to wait?
He's we're still waiting for him to come back. That's right. We filled in for you, mate. We don't need you. We've got it sorted.
Yeah, we're going to boot you off.
All right. Well, that's fun, but everybody likes the closer that I play at the end of the show. Who's going to play that if you boot me off?
Oh, I've been waiting forever to be able to say, look out. Oh, no, I better not say it. Let's do that.
Beck, thank you. I'll let you go.
Thanks, Beck.
Good enough. She's gone. And, well, mate, is that what would you like to say the words?
No, mate, I will do one day, but just not yet. because you do such a good job of it. So it's a bit of a shame that, I mean, it was fantastic that we had one on. So there's a couple of other topics that we can look at discussing probably next week. One of them is to do with the current interest rates and stuff. So, but
yeah, great.
Thank you for a brilliant show tonight, Carl, and for everybody out there, please. Right, we need to keep this Truth Seekers going, and we need to keep this Voice of Freedom going and the FBN going. So donate, voiceoffreedom.com. Right, go Voice of Freedom or VOFHQ.com, I should say. Donate, join a membership. I've got some plans to discuss with Carl. I'm looking into something that may be beneficial to all of our members or people who join in helping out financially. So be aware that's coming. So dangle that one out for a while.
All right. Thank you, buddy. You have yourself a great weekend, and go forth, get yourself some dinner, and I'll talk to you as you explain of the weekend. Cheers. Vincent's on his way out, and so am I. Have a good night, folks. Yes, I am very tired. It's been a trying couple of days for varying different reasons and a personal level. I have a friend of mine who's going through just the bullshit that the government are enforcing upon all of us. It is attacking people at all levels. Some people, they're attacking, it hits at a mental health level that eventually gets to a point they can't sustain their proper life, their proper existence, and things start going downhill. That's what's been going on in my life the last couple of weeks. A friend who's been spiraling downhill because of the pressures, in no short part, put on by our government and the health implications of taking that jab. I had an experience today with some doctors while I was trying to get this person some help. I rang them first thing this morning looking for a bit of mental health advice, and was told that doctor doesn't deal with anything like that. No doctors do anymore. The only place you can go is a hospital. So I had to take that person and put them into a mental if you are feeling that way, folks, if you are struggling with your mental health, please do not be afraid to ask for help. I don't mean of me. I'll try and get you what I can, but if you are struggling this way, please ask for help. There is always help available. And the people today at the hospital that my friend is currently seeing, I got to say, not that I'm a fan of hospitals, but I'm so glad that there was somebody today who's got a lot more experience in this field than I have and ever want to have. People have to be made responsible for what they've done to so many other people in this country, around the world. While people are dying, while people are being inflicted with lifelong trauma, there is a mental health aspect to this that, while I've probably acknowledged and agree that there is that issue in the community, in the last couple of days it's been brought home in stark regard just how much it's affecting our communities. I don't know if you've ever been inside a mental health ward, folks, but while I was around it today, I saw 6 people admitted, some of them screaming. Mental health's been an issue for forever, I'm sure. But now, the level of people requiring help, and the only place they can get it is a mental health hospital. Lifeline will give you an hour on the phone or however long they're allowed to talk for. But if you go and try and get help from a mental health support agency, like this person did do, and was told we can't see you until, 3rd week of July. Well, if that was the case and that person didn't have some level of support around them, They'd be dead by the middle of July at their own hand. So keep an eye out, folks. Keep an eye out on your friends and your family. We all have struggles. We all have mental health issues. Some deal more, some deal less. Some don't deal at all. We need to have a little bit of compassion. We need to have a little bit of empathy. But most of all, we need to have a memory of the bastards who did this to us. Forget the dickheads on the roads, folks. It's the bastards in the politics and the doctors, the APRA world. They've done this to us. It has to end. And there aren't enough dickheads on the road to run over them all.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us. You let one ant stand up to us, then